Welcome to Parenthood Unscripted, where honest conversations about raising kids take center stage. I'm your host, Samantha Taylor, speech language pathologist, business owner, and mom of two. Each episode, I sit down with professionals and real parents to talk about the parts of parenting we don't always say out loud, the challenges, the growth, the joy, and everything in between. Whether you're looking for connection, perspective, or simply to feel less alone, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Before we get to the episode, a quick note for anyone listening who has a story, perspective, or professional insight around parenting, child development, education, or advocacy. Parenthood Unscripted is always looking for guests who are open to honest, real conversations, the kind that help parents feel seen and supported in the messy, beautiful parts of raising kids. If that's you, I'd love for you to apply to be a guest on the show. You can find the application link in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you. Now let's get to the episode. So I am so excited to invite back Dr. Ann McIntosh. I had such a wonderful time talking with you for our first episode. So I'm really grateful that you're back with us. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back.
So after our last conversation, I had a few other questions that popped up for me. And one of the ones that I was wondering was, we talked a lot about your childhood in the last episode, but I wanted to kind of pivot into your adult life. So I was wondering, I know you're a married woman, you're married to a hearing man, and I was wondering how you've navigated marriage and parenting in a deaf hearing household.
So I have found deaf hearing marriages to be very, very interesting. That was actually my dissertation topic that I had in graduate school, was deaf hearing marriages, and I compared them to deaf marriages and hearing marriages and kind of studied through. And then about 10 to 20 years after that, I went back and studied it again. So I've been writing and keeping notes, putting together an ethnography of what it's like to be in a deaf hearing marriage. And it's been really wonderful to kind of be in there and to reflect on what I think are the deaf and the hearing nuances of that. So as you mentioned, I am married to a hearing spouse, and my husband signs a little bit, but not a lot. But as he grows older, he's kind of starting to slip a little bit in his hearing. So he'll say things like, I didn't hear, I was in the other room and I didn't hear you. So I'm having to adapt used to having a hearing husband where I could just call out and say things. So now I'm having to practice all those rules that I teach other people and use that in my own marriage. But some of the nuances of the deaf hearing marriages, I'm very much in a mainstream world. You know, some people call it the hearing world. I just call it more the mainstream world because I work in a hearing environment. My children are hearing and my husband is hearing. So it's really about adapting and pivoting and just coming up with communication solutions that work for both sides. It's really not a deaf thing or a hearing thing per se. It's just what do we need to do to work through this. And so that has been interesting. I've been married almost 27 years now, so a quarter of a century of experience here talking about this. And it's interesting in the sense that it's not the main point. I think a lot of other people, whether they come from an audiology or speech pathology or a medical standpoint, they want to focus on what is deaf and what is hearing and say this is because they're deaf, this is because they're hearing. But the marriage is so much bigger, so much broader, so much richer than that, that it's really not a deaf or hearing thing. It's really come down to I don't try to change him. He doesn't try to change me. We've accepted each other as we are, whatever your differences are there. So that has been helpful. Mainly support because I do belong to deaf and hard of hearing support groups. I do have friends that I met through that network, and he supports that and doesn't try to pull me in one world or out of the other. And those worlds accept each other and float. Sometimes you'll be in a group and it's like cued speech, only cued speech type people. Well, some people sign, not everybody cued speech, but being able to show the acceptance, I think is really wonderful in terms of how to navigate that. When we got pregnant and became parents, we deviated from what we worked in America. We only focused on each other, right? But then it became, what are you good at and what am I good at? So he was really good at hearing babies cry at night. So he got up with the babies at night. and he did the feeding and the diaper changes. So that was something that he did. So I got my beauty sleep during that time. But one of the things that I'm good at, and I take over those roles, and through that process, as the children have grown, we've continued that. I'm like, let's set ourselves up for success. What are you really good at? And you keep doing those things. And what am I really good at? As opposed to that's a man's role, that's a female role. So we didn't get into the sexism. Men's work is outside. I actually do most of the work outside of the house because I enjoy gardening. I enjoy mowing the lawn. So that's my area. He doesn't know his plants and trees, nor does he desire to learn that. So that's my cognate. That's what I'm really good at. And he's really good at other things, and he stays in those roles. So it's really about setting ourselves up for success and not look at it as a deaf hearing thing. I think when people do that, look at the deaf hearing thing, and you see failure, you see more failure, and you start perseverating on that and not looking at the bigger picture here. So I think you can go down a very dangerous trajectory when you do that. It's a
A-
slippery slope.
Absolutely. And we tend to filter our reality through whatever lens we have. So, to your point, if we have a negative lens, if we're looking at deficits, then we're going to filter our world through deficits, through lack. Whereas with your husband, and we try to do the same thing in our house, we try to look at our strengths. Okay, you're really good at cooking dinner. That can be your job. I'm really good at folding the laundry. That will be my job. So instead of deaf versus hearing, man versus woman, it's strengths oriented. And that can really help with like any resentments or any slacking, things like that. So that is such a really important thing to keep in mind, because especially there is so much pressure too from the outside world with gender roles, with ability roles, expectations and judgments and things like that. So I love that perspective. In our house, we call it Team Taylor. So we,
Team Taylor, I like
yep,
that term.
yep.
And
So
if you come across something where neither one of you are good at it, that's when I go to what I call the Rolodex, just contact list on phone. But we outsource that. So if something needs to be done, I'm not good at it, he's not good at it, rather than it just not getting addressed at all, that's where we say, okay, we're going to hire someone to go and do this piece for us. That has saved so much angst, so many fights, and so many everything else. He's not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, but it needs to get done. Okay, take out the checkbook and just pay and have this done and then move on.
yep, I can second that, because that's something we've worked on in our house, especially as a working mother and at the time having younger children. My husband is not much of a cleaner. I can clean, but my time was so spread so thin that that was a great area for us to outsource. So we have
Right.
someone that comes monthly to do like the nitty gritty, like dusting the ceiling fans and cleaning the baseboards because it was a point of tension for us. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. So kind of talking again about your husband, what do hearing spouses or family members in general often misunderstand about communication needs? And this could expand further to in-laws, cousins, extended family. Is there anything that has popped up for you over the years?
Taking out the deaf hearing distinction, communication is very complex, very interesting, and some people have different how do I put it? They have favorite ways to communicate. So they might text, or they might email, or they might post something on Facebook or Instagram, or they'll wait until they see you on Sunday at lunch and tell you. And so rather than trying to get people to conform to my schedule and my preferred method of communication, it's like I need to communicate with them in ways that they do that is very responsive. But some people are very want to see you, want a lot of face to face, and so they want to get together or so forth. Some people want to yap on the phone and do it that way. So for in terms of the family unit, it's like figuring out what works for them. So my kids are both hearing, but they would rather text me than FaceTime me or something. So I'll FaceTime them. Now, what I have noticed though is if they really, really need to get a hold of me, they really need my help with something, they will FaceTime me. So when I get a FaceTime call from the kids, I go, oh, this is really important to them because they never FaceTime me. They always text or something like that. So that's one piece of that. But the other part of that that I want to mention to throw the deaf hearing back into the mix is when we are tired, when we're fatigued, when we have worked a 14-hour day, when we skipped lunch or haven't had supper yet, we will be much more cranky. And when we are cranky and not our best, and if we're feeling under the weather, we're getting over a cold or something, that is when we're more likely to nitpick and start blaming your deaf. We'll get into that. So when it gets to the level that deaf hearing becomes the issue there, I'm like, you need to step back. People need to get their rest. They need to recharge because it's usually not about that, but that's a trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm hearing kind of as a theme here is it's acceptance, but then also meeting your communication partner, your spouse, whoever it might be, halfway, right? Because it's not is what works best for me, so I need you to conform. It's this is what works best for me. This is what works best for you. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. So because we want to honor all of the people that we're taking into consideration. And that's one thing that I kind of had to learn in real time with my son. So I obviously my son is deaf. He uses ASL only to communicate. So I went through a period of time, especially when he was younger, where I would just be angry at people that wouldn't sign with him. And so it's like he signs, you need to sign with him. If you don't sign with him, you cannot talk to him. And it was very black and white. And I think that's part of me going through the process of acceptance and things like that. And looking back, I can give that version of me grace, but I also see the error in the way of thinking like that because there are so many ways to communicate. We can text, we can write, we can lip read, we can verbally talk, whatever it might be. And so at the end of the day, if the end goal is communication, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you're communicating and it works for the people involved. So I have since revised my stance on that. But I do remember very vividly being just very black and white with that. And I think, again, it was me kind of trying to reconcile everything and find my place in advocacy. But that is a really great point that you're making that it is about acceptance. It is meeting both people where they're at in their preferred modality, and there's different situations call for different things. Like you mentioned, your children, if they really need you, they're going to FaceTime you because they know that's your preferred method and they know they will reach you. So I think that's really good to keep in mind, because we can become a little self-focused at times. So I think that's a good
Absolutely.
perspective
We need to
for
be
people.
reminded of that. I was just at a medical conference this past weekend and my husband attended, and everybody there pretty much was deaf. So he got to see deafness outside of me, which is good because I don't represent every single deaf person in America or in the world. So he got to see the nuances. There's similarities, there's general assumptions that he could make, but he was able to pick up on some things from other people that I don't do or whatever. So that is really important. Every now and then something will come up on Facebook. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it was a frog, I think, that is in water and he had taken his hearing aids out or something. And he's like, and you just see this steam come off. And it's like, yeah, that's how we feel at the end of the day after having amplification on for 12, 14, 16 hours a day. And I copied that and I pasted it to, we have a group chat with the family. And I said, this is me at the end of the day sometime. And it's just like, it was just somebody else put something into words or in a picture, and I'm like, that's me. But I share that with the family so that they can see kind of what my perspective is because they have no way of knowing what wearing a hearing aid feels like or what wearing a cochlear implant. And I cannot even explain it even if you can explain it in words, it's still not going to give them that experience.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the nice things about social media is because there's access to millions and millions of people who are able to capture different experiences in different ways that are relatable that you can share with people in your family or whoever, just to give them some context of what your experience is like. And sometimes it has a whole different meaning coming from someone else. It makes me think back to, I think it was about 2 years ago, we did a trip down to Washington, D.C. It was our family of four and then our close friends. And they only know one deaf person, and that's my son. So my son is like the representative of all deaf people for them. So, but while we were there, we were able to go to Mazzeria. I don't, have you heard of Mazzeria?
Yeah,
So it,
pizzeria. That's
yes, yes, it's such a cool restaurant. So we went there and it's really a cool experience because the hearing people had to use accommodations to order if they didn't know ASL. So it was really neat for us to take our friends who hadn't experienced deafness in any other way other than our son, for them to experience that. It reminds me a little bit of your husband being able to see a vaster representation of deafness at that medical convention. It was a way for our friends to see a wider representation of deafness outside of our son. So it's neat when you get those opportunities. Um,
hmm
so kind of pivoting to like the medical convention and things like that. Last time you had started to tell us a bit about the safe and clear masks, and you shared such a beautiful story about how you thought that up through your experience through giving birth to your first child. So I wanted to give you some space just to tell us a little bit more about that, really why they're so important and why you're so passionate about them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And so at the medical convention, which was really a wonderful conference to attend because we are supporting deaf and hard of hearing college students and medical students, dental students, and veterinary students to go through the clinical rotation so that they can have these fantastic careers in medicine, healthcare, and dentistry. It's really great. So I have right here an example of the clear mask, what it looks like on a medical provider. We've got this mannequin here so that you can lip read and see the facial expression. So this is really important for that. But it's also important for the deaf and the hard of hearing person. I really want to make sure, I think we're going to talk a little bit more in this podcast about advocacy and working, but we deaf and hearing people need to advocate for communication accessibility, just across the board for everybody. Injustice anywhere is going to be injustice everywhere. So when you go to the dentist office, you need to request a clear mask saying, I would like to see more of your facial expression. When a deaf person goes, I would like a clear mask to be used, and please document this in my medical records. It's really important that we document this in electronic healthcare records or medical records such as Epic or Oracle, because then it has more teeth if we have to come back to it later and they say, oh, we didn't know. Well, yes, you did because it's in my records. No, it's in my records that I need this. Whether it's qualified interpreter, caption video, clear mask, whatever the accommodation needs to be. And it kind of takes some of that responsibility. They get used to the deaf person needing that responsibility. And I get that, and I can understand why mainstream world think that way. But then you have to say, well, the police officer, did the police officer come with everything personally? No, he has a police car. He or she had their uniform with equipment on their uniform. So they're outfitted, they're equipped to do their job, but it doesn't all come from them. A firefighter doesn't show up in your house in his or her personal car. They come on a fire truck. And that fire truck. So the environment is set up for them to succeed in the workplace. Well, so when we come to deaf, as a deaf person to a dentist office or a medical appointment, we have certain things, but the environment needs to be set up there. So it's very important that we ask for that communication, accommodation, or preference to be in there. Not just for deaf or hearing. If they're on the autism spectrum, if English is not their native language, if they're immigrant, if they're older than 65 and they just are a little bit hard of hearing, aphasia, apraxia, all kinds of communication disorders where seeing the face can provide more cues. We're trying, I want to get away from right and wrong, and like it's about how do we get thought and ideas from one person into the other and make those connections. What do we need to do? Do we need to gesture? Do we need to sign? But having that clear master is just vitally, vitally important. It helps out the patient, it helps out the healthcare provider, even those healthcare providers that may not know that they could benefit from that.
Absolutely. And education is the first place. And so this is a great way to spread that message. So I'm curious, as an individual, if I go to my doctor's appointment or my dentist appointment and I request the clear mask, where does it go from there? Because I know I'm so happy to start seeing it take off, but I know there's still a large population that doesn't know about it. So where do we go from here? So as an individual, I advocate for it, but then what?
So if the person doesn't know what you're talking about, like where you educate and you can say, hey, you can go to Safe and Clear and get this, or talk to the language interpreting services or something there at that medical facility or dental facility. If they are aware of it and they say, oh, well, you're not deaf, or oh, you're not, are you getting resistant? So then, medically justify, because we're actually now trying to educate healthcare system that they can medically bill and code for these clear masks to medically justify that it's needed so that they can get reimbursed, which is awesome because currently the regular PPE hospitals, they don't get reimbursed for gowns, gloves, and masks. That's just part of the overhead. But if they can get reimbursed for this clear mask, that now adds to their bottom line and it helps them out. So we're like, great, if you can do that for all, do total conversion, then we don't have to ask for clear masks because every mask will be clear. So that's where we're trying to go. But to your point, we're way, way behind. We've got a lot of catching up to do in terms of this idea of catching on and really moving forward. But in terms of you asking for it, say, I'm asking for me, but I'm asking for my aunt, my grandma, my son, all these people around me that really need clear communication. It just makes sense that you would wear a clear mask. So you're planting that seed with them. I will even say to them, I'll pay the difference between the regular mask and the clear mask. It matters that much to me. So I'll give you a side example of that. Several years ago, I had a mammogram. And when I went in to get checked in for the mammogram, they asked me, do you want the regular mammogram or do you want the 3D mammogram? I didn't know what was what. I said, well, what's the 3D mammogram? They said, well, it's a little bit different. It's more like it reduces callback, and I have been called back before on a mammogram. And they said, but it's not covered by insurance. You'll have to pay extra. And I said, well, what is that? They said $25. Well, $25 was not going to even cover my copay on a callback or my time or anything else. So I was personally better off making the difference up, paying that $25. But today, I don't get asked that question because the 3D mammography is standard level of care. But when it first came out, it wasn't. So I'm like, let's be willing to pay the difference to get it there, and then hopefully it will become standard level of care, and you won't have to request it. It will just be there.
Yep, exactly. Getting it kind of standard, as you had mentioned, is such an important thing. And also, if I think about it, if I request it and then get it in an office and then other patients see that, then they're going to start requesting it at other providers that they go to, and then it will spread even further. And on the other side, too, if I go to a dentist that uses these clear masks and I talk to another person who's maybe looking for a dentist, they're going to be more apt to go to that dentist because that accommodation or that tool is already in place. And as you had mentioned, it's beneficial to every single person on the planet. So I love
Mhm.
that they have the opportunity to get it reimbursed by insurance or what have you, because at that point it becomes a no-brainer for them. I think at this point it's really
Exactly. It
just,
removes that pain point.
yep,
Yeah, it
yep.
removes that barrier, and it really is a no-brainer. But they've got to see that it's a no-brainer from the financial perspective on that.
Yeah. So I know for me, I'm going to be a strong advocate at all of our appointments. And in Rochester, we are very fortunate to be one of the more deaf friendly cities in the United States. So I will say we do have um, especially with interpreters. I've seen quite a few interpreters in the medical field using clear masks, which is really wonderful. But there's definitely some room for growth here as well as across the rest of the United States. So I know, like I mentioned, I'm going to be a huge proponent to push for those because I think it is beneficial. As a speech language pathologist, I always want to see the face and I want others to always see the face.
So
So
we've actually created a children's book where we introduce the clear mask in a children's book so that the kids can see it, mom and dad reading the book can see it, and it's set up in that setting. So it's just another avenue in terms of an educational resource of how to put this idea out there for people.
I love that. And then also it's helping the kids early on to know what to advocate for as well. So in the
Exactly,
request.
exactly. Let the kids know that this exists.
Yep, yep. So talking about kids in accommodations, what are some accommodations parents might not realize they can ask for, whether it's at school, doctor visits, dental appointments, activities, whatever it might be?
Wow, that's so many opportunities there. Well, the parent will know their child. And usually parents, we're gonna advocate, we're gonna be the mama bear for our child with our child's issue. But what I do ask for parents to do is step out. You're not just parenting your child, you're parenting for all children. So please kind of step back and think about the greater good. So your child needs this, but the child next to your child might need something a little different. And so you don't want to be so zoomed in on your child, which is what I call a helicopter parent, that you don't see larger pictures and they just try to placate you. And it's not really the real world for that child, for others. But if we have a systemic issue for exceptional children, then I would say we need to address that. And it's really about that parent finding someone who's a champion inside that organization or that department that speaks that lingo, that knows that vocabulary, and has the respect of that field. In your work as a speech language pathologist, you probably had that parent come in, the one who asks for everything and can't be pleased no matter what you do. We don't want to be labeled like that parent, the problem parent. But we want to help that system. So that's where I'm saying get an advocate to go in as a team. Now it's not just you, it's two or three others and come together as a team and say we've noticed this issue and we want to help instead of you need to do this and you need to do that and you're wrong about this. This finger pointing and name blaming and name calling, that is not how we go about resolving issues and getting a long-term solution. But it's about we've noticed this, we think there can be improvement, we want to help you and also get input from them as well. I just did a webinar last week with the team, and the first thing that I did with that team was I thanked them for what they do. They have a very, very hard job, and they probably don't hear often enough of how well they do things. They probably only hear when they don't do something right. So I really wanted to say we're not here to beat you up. We're here to help you, and you guys are doing tremendous work. And one of them on the call said, nobody has ever said that to us before. And I'm like, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. And secondly, I'm glad that you hear that because they really are super duper people and they're doing great work. But so when parents are advocating for the children, it's like I would say, I'm observing this, but then ask the teacher or ask the note on that side, what are you seeing? And maybe between the two of you, the two different perspectives, you can come up with a plan that will work not only for that child, but also work for some others. Because I'm not everybody's mom. So I don't know what, and I'm not in every classroom. I'm not in every reading group. I'm not in every speech therapy session. So if we're looking at creating solution for the system, the systemic issue, then we're going to have to broaden out from ourselves on that and ask for teammates and say, can we work together and help resolve this? And I'm all the time willing, when somebody said, hey, let's work together on something, my defenses are down. You're not blaming me. You're not calling me an idiot. I'm not stupid. But when I get a call and say, you, there, it's like, okay, absorb this. Let this person vent. Let them get it out. And then let's see if we can resolve the issue. But sometimes people are so into that mode, you can't resolve the issue. And I can't help those people. No.
Yeah. One of the pillars I teach, it's called advocacy in parentheses with a star with grace. So we want to advocate with grace, because I know what it's like to be on both sides of the table. I know what it's like to be the professional at the table, but I also know what it's like to be the mom who feels like she's spiraling, who feels like she's out of control. But there's a part of you that kind of has to separate the emotion from it, because if you bring all of that emotion with you, you do come across as that mama bear who just is demanding all of the things. And you're right, those defenses come up immediately, and then it's almost us versus them versus us working
Correct.
together for that child. And at the end of the day, the child is the one who loses because we are battling on two opposite sides versus working together. And I, as a parent, with having the insight of what it's like to be the professional, I do always ask, what are you seeing at school? Because you're with my child 8 hours out of the day in a structured learning environment, whereas I'm with them probably, oh gosh, 4 or 5 hours a night, and it looks very different because it's less structured, it's dinner and homework and things like that. So what they might need at home is vastly different than what they need in the classroom. And sometimes the staff might need some education on where there might be some gaps, but that's where that collaboration and that teamwork comes together, especially if the parents are asking those questions. What are you seeing? Where are the breakdowns happening? What could help them be successful? And then one other thing I wanted to add to that, because I have worked with public schools for my son who had never worked with a deaf child before, and there was a lot of fear. And so there were a lot of, I don't know if we can do that. And it wasn't because they were shutting me down, it was because they were scared because they hadn't done that before. So for me, I also came in as someone willing to work with them, not saying like, these are what need to happen, you need to figure this out and I'm not going to be happy until you do. It was, this is what needs to happen. I will work with you. I will do my research. You do your research. We'll come together and we'll see how we can make this work. Again, making it more collaborative. So I love that you touch on the importance of advocating with grace and being open to what they have to say as well, instead of just doubling down and doing those you statements, shutting them down, creating those defenses.
And those are the kinds of people that make our job even harder. And those are the kind of people that reinforce what mainstream hearing world think. And it gives all of us who are working with people with disabilities a bad name, a bad rap, and a bad reputation. And we have to push through all that. So if they've had three negative interactions and we come up number four and we're trying to do positive, know that they have a history with three strikes before we're out before we even get there. And so you have to get over that. I had a geometry teacher in 10th grade, and my mom went to her and was telling her about my hearing loss and all. And the geometry teacher was a person of faith, and she said, "Dear Lord, I have got to do right by this child." She ended up being one of my absolute best friends later in life, and she got an iPhone, and I got to teach her how to do the iPhone. So we went from being teacher student to student teacher and switching out. But it was she had that fear. She had never encountered that before. Did not learn about that when she was going through her college education. But she had that right attitude. We got to do right by the child, and she didn't have that negativity. But I have run into people where they're like, "We've seen this before. We know how this is going to go down. This ain't going to be pretty." And it's just, and I'm like, it doesn't need to be like that, but I appreciate them telling me that.
Yep, yep. Because then
And
you
it, it,
know.
it, it makes it harder. It makes it harder because not only do you have to try to put together a good picture, you've got to work through all that messy stuff that's in their head. No, when we have our experiences, and our experiences don't lie, and you're telling me that this is going to be different, but that's not been my experience. So it puts us on alert.
Yeah, yeah, because then it's you're almost doing double duty, because then you are bringing in that positive experience, but then you also have to work through their negative experience that they did have. They did have
Mhm.
that, so that it
Yeah,
does
it's more
create.
than double duty, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And on the other side, I know there's so many parents that are fearful of coming across as being difficult. So I'm wondering, do you have any advice for how parents can advocate confidently without feeling like they're being difficult? I know you touched on it a little bit, but just kind of highlight that.
Yeah. Number one, practice, rehearse in the confines of a trusted professional friend. who is not afraid to give you advice as to how that session went and to practice on that. And sometimes I bring my kids in and I say, okay, we're gonna role play here. I'm gonna be so and so, you're gonna be so and so. Tell me how this sounds to you. How would you hear this? And so they'll listen and they'll give me feedback. They'll hear something or see something that I haven't thought of, and I'll be like, that's valuable. So rather than taking something and just rushing off to the school, it's like really think about it, get your ducks in a row, hash that out with somebody, get some good feedback, and remove the emotions. If you do not control your emotions are going to control you. Confucius said that, and it is so true. And you're gonna come across as looking like that crazy person, that emotional person. But when you can come in and talk about this, and there's no emotion tied to it, you're gonna gain so much more respect and you're going to be able to push through. You might not get everything resolved in that day, but you can certainly make some headway in that. And I think that a lot of times, Mama Bear, we run off of that emotion, we run off of that adrenaline for that. There's injustice, somebody is not helping my child, and it's that love for the child, but you've got to work past that. And sometimes people are not always in check with their emotions. So I would do that. Secondly, if you cannot do that, if you cannot separate your emotions and everything, perhaps you need a mouthpiece to go in your stead. Have somebody else to speak the words and be the microphone and your mouthpiece for you if you can't do that. So if one of the kids upsets me or something, I'll be like, hold on, your father will be calling you later. And one of Dad's strengths is he can talk about something and say, your mother's really riled up about this. I highly suggest that you get back in her good grace or whatever. So maybe it's not me going to the school or me going to the doctor's office. Maybe it is me having an ally that will go and do that on my behalf for the child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you had mentioned about like kind of getting the reps in, getting that practice with someone that you trust, because not only will you be able to process through your thinking and kind of collect your thoughts, but then also you can get feedback because maybe you're saying something in one way and your communication partner is not picking that up. So it might come across as you think you're asking for something directly and they're thinking like, oh no, that was really vague. I actually don't know what you want. Or you think you're asking something in a respectful, non-judgmental, emotionless way. And it's like, oh no, that sounded really heated. So it can also help kind of get your message in check and help you feel confident in what you want to say and that it's coming out in the way you want to say it, but then also having that trusted person who can speak on your behalf with those thoughts, being able to strip away those emotions. Because obviously, whatever emotions you feel are 100% justified, but they can do more damage than good if they're coming out in those meetings, because then it's creating this filter between your message and the recipient. And we don't want that because then it's not effective for your child. And then unfortunately, because we are all humans, we all do have egos and feelings and emotions and perspective, that does create that shutdown, and that might create more no's than yeses or possibilities. And that at the end of the day, we don't want that.
Hmm. I always set it up because I have a background in conflict resolution. Are you trying to win this battle or are you trying to win the war? So these battles is the day to day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Those are the battle. But the war is helping kids and advocating for kids. Now, I'm aware of HIPAA in medicine and I'm aware of FERPA within education. So it's very important that a parent, who's allowed to pick up my child or who's allowed to speak, that if there are other mouthpieces and things so that a school can listen and talk to someone else, those people need to be named very specifically so that they can advocate on your behalf. Now, I might still go to the meeting, but they might, take most of the communication. So if I'm a parent and I'm not doing well, but the speech pathologist is really good, and they're in that, I might have the speech pathologist to speak for me and so, in the presence and kind of mediate that. You essentially have a mediator there to pull that through. Because sometimes people don't want to deal directly with you for whatever reasons about you. They might be withholding information, but in front of somebody else, they might be a little bit more helpful.
Absolutely. And quick little side note, as a speech language pathologist at a lot of these meetings, I do check in with my parents beforehand and say, because a lot of these meetings, we're in 2026, they happen on Zoom. So I say, send me a quick Zoom chat if you want to like tag me in, let me know, and I will be there. So it's important to have those relationships with those people that are working and love and support your child too, because 9 times out of 10, they're more than willing because they love your child not as much as you, obviously, because it's your child, but they love your child as if it's their own. So, like for me, any of my children on my caseload, I will go up to bat any day of the week. But I don't have maybe as much of an emotional response because they're not my own physical child, if that makes sense.
Well, that's why surgeons can't operate on their own family members, right? I
Yep.
mean, that's a rule. And you can't lawyer your own I mean, so if we look at professions, and I certainly consider the education setting a profession, it's the same principle at play there.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need
absolutely.
somebody who is knowledgeable but is not emotionally charged on this.
Absolutely. Well, I have loved our second conversation so much. So please remind everyone where they can find you and how they can connect with you.
Sure. So safeandclear.com is our website. They can do that, and they can also email me at anne.mcintosh, M-C-I-N-T as in Tom, O-S as in Sam, H at safeandclear.com. And I'll be more than happy to engage and interact, especially if they have any questions. So maybe if you get some feedback from today's podcast, we can maybe set some things up for the next week. But I'm interested in hearing if people say, I have done all the things you've talked about and I'm still not working. That would intrigue me, and I really like to get some to dig down deep in there because I don't want people giving up. So we still need to try harder to figure out, what's going on. It might not just be about your child. It might be a little bit larger than that. And so go in and see how we can help out with that. But there are mediators that can assist people. So that's the big takeaway.
Yeah, yeah. And as always, I will link all that information in the show notes. But yes, please leave any comments of thoughts on what we've covered, any questions you have. And as Anne mentioned, I would love to know if you have tried these things, maybe what you've come against or come across, and we can talk through that. But again, thank you so much for joining me again. I greatly appreciate your time, and I love our time together.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here today.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Parenthood Unscripted. If today's conversation resonated with you, please share it with another parent who might need it. You can follow along on Instagram at Parenthood Unscripted for updates, clips, and future guest announcements. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you next time.